Hi, and welcome to That You May Believe, a study in the Gospel of John, picking out the themes and looking at what the themes have to teach us about life and faith here today and how we might believe anew in the way of Jesus and to connect in that during this time. I'm Rustin.
And I'm Danielle.
And we're both parts of the pastoral team here at Wayzata Community Church. So today we're going to continue in the theme of darkness and light and see what we can learn from that. We started in the first chapter of John in the prologue where he kind of lays out this life and light coming into the world and darkness cannot defeat it. And now we're going to jump all the way to chapter 20, which is the final chapter in the Gospel of John.
The book ends.
So we're going to look at that and see where we see darkness and light in that text as well. So I'm going to read to you from Gospel of John chapter 20, verses 1 through 10. So early on that first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the tomb. So she ran and went to Simon Peter and the other disciples, the one whom Jesus loved, and said to them, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him." Then Peter and the other disciples set out and they went towards the tomb, and they were running together, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent down and looked and saw linen wrappings lying there, but he did not go in. Simon Peter came following him and went into the tomb, and he saw the linen wrappings lying there, and the cloth that had been on Jesus' head, not lying with the linen wrapping, but rolled up in a place by itself. Then the other disciple who reached the tomb first also went in, and he saw and he believed. And yet, as they did not understand the scripture that he must rise from the dead, then the disciples returned to their homes.
It's not overt darkness and light.
No. But part of what happens, right, is while it was still dark.
Yeah.
Right? So John is pulling us back that while it was still dark, the stone rolled away.
Yes.
Right? The light broke through while it was still dark. What's going to happen shortly after this is the women are going to come and they're going to see
Jesus, who they think is the gardener.
But
he's illuminated. That's so cool. I love it.
Isn't that cool?
You know what? This is my favorite book. Now that we're talking about it more, I thought it was Luke. It's this one.
Yeah, no, it's just awesome, right?
It's so awesome.
It's so, like, for me, you can really see the artistry of this community crafting this text to unveil this story. Like, from the very beginning, they're telling us darkness is going to overcome light, and we get to this last place, and darkness is overcoming light. Mm-hmm. Light is overcoming darkness.
Yep.
Like, that's what's happening in the midst of this. That these figures of light and darkness that define the plot of this gospel, we're coming at it at the end, and we see that light wins.
Well, and nothing, I think, is darker to humans than death. Nothing. And so the idea that, it is through Christ's death that the ultimate light begins to shine again is just enormously powerful and hopeful to us as we have to both wrestle with our own death and the death of all those that we love.
Yeah. It's such a powerful connection because it is a darkness that we will all face.
Yep.
Right? That we fear, and I would say more than any other thing that I've had kind of existential conversations with church members about across 20 years of ministry. It's how they feel about death.
Yeah.
Like the baggage they carry about death. And John is here saying, like, light wins even in that.
Yeah.
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 So John narrates in this that Mary Magdalene, that's using light as a symbolism in a more subtle way. Mary comes to the tomb while it's still dark, as we said, assuming that Jesus is dead. And Mary's understanding or lack of seeing in the situation of the darkness causes her distress.
Yeah.
Right? Which is what darkness does to us frequently.
Yes.
Is we come into the darkness and we freak out because there's all this darkness around us. And so for Mary, like in the midst of that freak out, she runs back and says, something's wrong.
Yeah.
Something's out of place. It's not like it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how much of the last 3 months is us saying it's not what it's supposed to be?
Right.
And in the midst of this, assuming that Jesus is still dead, Mary is in this distress until verse 11, where she finds Jesus alive in new ways.
Yeah.
But beautifully, in verse 15, it talks about that she doesn't recognize him. Like you said, she sees him as a gardener.
Well, and to me, this story really illustrates how quick maybe humans are to believe that the darkness has won.
Totally.
You know, that we just so easily lose sight of the light. And maybe we lose creativity in the darkness. You know, that we sort of look for something to happen one way, it doesn't happen that way, and so then it feels like darkness, or it is darkness. And so there's sort of this new thing God is doing, both in this story, but maybe in us, in the places that we are in the dark.
Well, it makes me wonder, like, why is it easier for us to believe in the darkness than it is for us to believe in the light? Because she fully bought in to Jesus' death.
Right.
Right? She was all in, so much so that she couldn't recognize him until he spoke her name.
Yeah. I think it's because we have experienced the light in one way. The darkness comes, which disorients us and makes us feel like, oh my gosh, the light is gone. And then it's hard to look for the light to return differently, which is how the light usually returns.
Yeah, it's that reorientation.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I do think the place where most of us quit is the moment before reorientation.
Yep.
So we get disoriented in darkness. We meet the darkness. We live in the darkness. We're there. We're captured by it. It overcomes us. And then light breaks in, and we have a choice to reorient
Yep.
or not. And frequently, I feel like we don't. We just buy into the darkness and let it be.
Yeah.
But what happens for Mary, right, is she sees Jesus. She doesn't recognize him. Then Jesus says, "Hey, Mary." And she's like, light.
Yes. When he says her name,
she
which I
says
think
her
is
name.
so beautiful
Yeah.
too.
So it's this, like, then at verse 16, she has this confession of faith and a proclamation that I've seen the Lord, right? Like, the light comes as she proclaims that, no, I met Jesus again. I met him in the garden. Come see.
And it's important, I think, you know, it can be easy to, it can be easy with Peter, it can be easy with Mary to be like, oh my gosh, they didn't get it. I can't believe they didn't get it. We are them and they are us, right? And what is beautiful about both Mary and Peter is that they stick with it. They keep looking. I think they keep looking, and that's why they see it.
Yeah, it is the movement towards the symbol of light is a gradual reorienting, right? They keep going.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, Mary could have said, "Oh, it's the gardener, I'm out."
Yep.
She said, "Oh, it's the gardener," kept the conversation going, then has this moment, then reveals that this is the Lord to her. So light, as light does, like, if I were to light a match in a dark room, right here it's very bright. Everywhere else the light dissipates.
Yep.
And you have to sometimes move through the dark space towards the brighter piece of the light to be
To fully.
to a place where you can be reoriented.
Well, and I think I love in both those stories as well that Jesus also shows up for them. I mean, Jesus shows up for Peter on the beach when he's fishing. Jesus shows up for Mary in the garden. Jesus shows up to the disciples when they're in desolation at the end of John as well, when they're in the upper room just saying, what are we supposed to do now?
Right.
Like we gave everything for this cause, and what are we supposed to do now? And that's when Jesus shows up.
And he re-shows up for Thomas.
Yep.
Right, which I
Yeah.
love. Like, Thomas wasn't there, so he
Right.
comes back and he lets Thomas stick his hand inside of his side, right? Like there are these spaces, and part of what the Gospel of John does for us is it reminds us that what Jesus is doing is he's meeting us where we are. The light meets us where we are.
Yes. I had a particularly hard situation in my own life with someone for years and years and years. And I used to pray, God, please I would just say, God, to throw her a rope, throw her a rope, throw her a rope. And finally, in prayer, God reoriented me to say, no, your prayer should be that she grabs the rope, because I already threw the rope. So, and to me, that sort of experience I had in prayer has stuck with me all these years, because I feel like it's a beautiful example of this, of the both and. You know, the sort of work light takes on our part, but the way God is working to show us and give us the light all the time.
Yeah.
So there's two parts to all these pieces.
Yeah, and I do believe that. And I do believe that, like, the prologue draws us to the fact that God is at work creating life and light in the world and always has been,
Yes.
right? So going
the beginning.
from the beginning, God's been creating life and light.
Yeah.
That is. And to the end, he will continue to do that
Yes.
for all people. That's this beautiful movement of light in the midst of this. So I think one of the challenges we want to do each week is have you place yourself within the text. I think John 1 is a hard text to place yourself in because it's this poetic, there in the beginning.
Except for John the Baptist. You could
You
put
could
yourself in John the
there.
Baptist's
Yeah, you
shoes.
could. And you could put yourself there in the creation of the world if you wanted to. You could
Yeah,
be,
what would you be?
Yeah,
you could be a bean sprout?
You could be the light.
That's bold. I don't know. Can you be the light?
Yeah, of course you can be the light.
But Jesus was the light.
Yeah, and we are the light too.
Oh.
He says that, right?
Yeah.
Like he's come that we can have life and life abundant. If life is the point of light, and then he says you're the life for the world.
So what kind of light are you? Are you a sunrise, a sunset, an overcast day where there's still light,
There
but
you
it's
go.
maybe dimmed?
But I do think you can very easily place yourself into this John chapter 20 verses 1 through 20.
Yeah, there's so
right?
many
and
different
see
characters.
different characters in that and meet and see what it looks like for the light to break that morning, to come to the tomb in the dark,
Yep.
to go back to the garden as Mary Magdalene, to go back into the text of whether you're John running or whether you're Peter running, what it's like to run after it. After you've heard this distressing news that the one you love has been taken from the tomb.
Yeah.
Like, what are you feeling in the midst of that? Like, how do you feel the darkness?
Yep.
That's part of what this method of scriptural reading does for us, is it tangibly puts, what do you taste, smell, see, touch in those moments when you read the text as one of the people?
Yeah.
And so that's our challenge as we close this week on Friday, is that you read yourself into this text, maybe put yourself in a couple characters in John chapter 20, and continue to look, as we said for the question of the week, where is light breaking into your darkness? Where are you creating darkness and light in your life?
Yep.
So, as we close this week, may the light be more apparent than the darkness in your life. Go in peace.
Amen.